The Hidden Frontline. What people ate to survive. Why imagine. It is 1943. The sun has set over a quiet neighborhood in London, or perhaps a small town in Ohio. You walk into your kitchen, and you are hungry. But when you open the pantry, there is no flour, there is no sugar, there is no meat. In your pocket, you have money. But in this world, money is secondary. What you really need are small, colorful scraps of paper, ration stamps. Without them, you are a ghost in the marketplace. During World War II, the battle wasn't just fought with tanks and planes. It was fought in the kitchen, over boiling pots of water and strange, experimental ingredients. Today, we are going to look at the incredible, and sometimes terrifying, creativity of the wartime kitchen. Welcome to XL History, where we uncover the stories that time almost forgot. I am your host, and today, we are dining on the edge of survival. As the war machine kicked into high gear, the United States government realized something critical. The military was now a massive, hungry entity. It wasn't just competing for soldiers. It was competing for every scrap of food, every ounce of metal, and every gallon of gasoline. To ensure the troops had the energy to win, the Office of Price Administration, or the OPA, took control of the civilian plate. They introduced rationing, a system where every citizen, from the oldest grandfather to the youngest baby, was assigned a certain number of points. Think about that for a second. A pound of bacon in 1943 wouldn't just cost you 30 cents. It would cost you 7 of your precious red points. If you ran out of points, you didn't eat meat, no matter how much cash you had in your wallet. This led to a new kind of social currency. Books of stamps were distributed by volunteers, and mothers became expert accountants, calculating exactly how many points a single family dinner would cost. But as the shortages grew, even the stamps couldn't buy what wasn't there. And that is when the real weird history began. When the real thing disappears, you build an illusion. That was the philosophy of the wartime cook. The mock fish fillet. In England, fish was a staple, but the sea was a dangerous place for fishing boats. So, cooks got creative. They took rice and eggs, mixed them together, and pressed them into a pan until they were about half an inch thick. Once it was chilled, they would slice it into fillets, bread it with whatever crumbs they had, and fry it until it was golden. It looked like fish, it felt like fish, but it was a culinary ghost. The Economy Loaf. In America, meatloaf was the king of the dinner table. But when beef went to the front lines, the meatloaf became meatless. The Economy Loaf was born. Instead of ground beef, you used a cup of peas, a cup of mashed potatoes, and a can of condensed tomato soup. It wasn't quite a steak, but it filled the belly. And in 1942, that was enough. The polished sour cream. The situation in occupied Poland was far more dire. 25% of the population had been wiped out, and the Germans had seized the land. For Polish children, there was no luxury, but mothers found a way to make sour cream using only milk, a tiny bit of sugar, and patats anew, or potato flour. They would pour this thick, white mixture over blueberry dumplings, giving their children a moment of sweetness in a world of gray. For many, the hardest part of the war wasn't the lack of meat, it was the lack of coffee. In America, coffee was restricted to just 1 pound every 5 to 6 weeks. That is less than 1 cup a day. For a nation used to a constant caffeine flow, this was a nightmare. The solution? Roosevelt coffee, named after the president. This wasn't really coffee at all. It was made by taking the old, used grounds and brewing them a second or third time. It was watery, bitter, and sad. To hide the taste, people added hindiba or chicory, or they used a substitute called postum, a mixture of wheat bran, wheat, molasses, and maltodextrin. It gave you the color of coffee, but none of the soul. And if you wanted a snack with your coffee, you might have bean cake. In Poland, when flour was gone, they boiled and minced beans until they were a soft, malleable paste. They added 6 tablespoons of sugar to mask the earthy flavor, and baked it. It was a cake built on survival, not flavor. As the war dragged on, the ingredients became even stranger. Stuffed onions with grape nuts. Vegetables were plentiful in America, because they couldn't be shipped overseas without spoiling. The government urged people to plant victory gardens. Onions were everywhere. To make them a meal, cooks would hollow them out and stuff them with Grape-Nuts cereal. Believe it or not, when mixed with the right spices, the cereal gave the onion a texture surprisingly similar to ground beef. The Sawdust Bread. This is the darkest chapter of the wartime kitchen. In England and Germany, wheat was so scarce that they turned to the forest. They mixed their rye grain with actual, physical sawdust. They called it tree flour. One German recipe for black bread called for 2 parts sawdust and 1 part minced leaves and straw. It is hard for us to imagine today, sitting in a world of fast food and abundance, that people were forced to eat trees just to see the next morning. But they did, and they survived. The history of WWII isn't just written in the blood of soldiers. It is written in the recipes of the survivors. It is a story of human resilience, of the refusal to give up, even when the pantry was empty and the world was on fire. The next time you sit down for a meal, take a look at your plate. Think about the flour, the sugar, the coffee. We live in a world of luxury that our ancestors could only dream of during those dark years. Which of these wartime dishes would you be brave enough to try? Would you take a bite of the sawdust bread, or perhaps a slice of the mock fish? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the kitchens of the past, please consider subscribing to XL History. Your support helps us keep these stories alive. Thank you for watching. And remember, stay curious, because the past is closer than you think.